with a world far away from Earth, a world that once shined with tall crystal cities and glowing skies. Long ago, this world was ruled by an empress who was known across galaxies. She was powerful, respected, and feared by many. But among all the strange creations and weapons she possessed, there was one living being that was closest to her, a rare alien dragon with frost blue scales. This creature wasn't like the dragons people imagine in stories. It was calmer, more intelligent, and deeply loyal to its master. Its breath could freeze anything, and its wings shimmered like frozen glass under starlight. For years, the Empress used this dragon as a symbol of her strength. Whenever she traveled to different planets, the dragon followed. People from other worlds watched it with both fear and admiration. To the Empress, it was not just a creature. It was proof that she controlled forces beyond normal understanding. But even though the dragon obeyed her commands, it had its own thoughts and emotions. It felt loyalty because that was how it was raised, not because it was loved. Eventually, war arrived. It wasn't a normal war with soldiers and guns. It was a conflict of entire planets trying to survive. The Empress's enemies grew stronger. Cities fell. Skies darkened. The world she ruled slowly broke apart. Even though she controlled massive ships and advanced weapons, nothing could stop the collapse of her empire. During the final days of the war, the Empress made a desperate decision. She gathered her most valuable belongings and prepared to escape the planet. Among the things she wanted to save was her dragon. But even she knew she couldn't carry a creature that large on her small escape ship. The dragon was powerful, but it was also heavy, slow, and weakened from battles. Taking it with her would slow her down and increase the chance of being captured. So she chose the one thing she believed would keep it alive, the ancient cryovault. It was a large, sealed chamber that froze anything inside without harming it. The Empress ordered her workers to place the dragon inside. The creature didn't resist. It trusted her. It believed she would return for it one day. When the dragon stepped into the vault, its eyes showed no fear, only calm obedience. As the vault door shut, the freezing systems activated, covering the dragon in layers of frost. Its breathing slowed. Its eyes gently closed. Its heart beat once, then again, then finally went quiet as everything inside became still. The cryovault was launched into space with the belief that after the war ended, the Empress would come back for her loyal companion. But things don't always go as planned. Her world fell, and she never returned. The vault drifted alone in space for centuries, carried by cosmic winds and gravity. Planets formed and disappeared. Stars exploded into new life. But inside the vault, the dragon remained unchanged, frozen in time. After thousands of years of drifting, the vault finally entered the solar system near Earth. It was no longer moving fast. Its outer shell was covered in scratches, dust, and pieces of old space rock. With no one to guide it, the vault slowly got pulled in by Earth's gravity. One cold night, it entered the atmosphere and crashed into a remote mountain region. The crash wasn't loud enough for people to notice. The mountains swallowed the sound, and snow covered the impact site within hours. Over time, nature claimed it. Heavy snowstorms buried the vault deeper each winter. Ice formed thick layers around it, hiding it completely from the eyes of humans. For centuries, no one knew that under the stone and ice was a creature that had once been a symbol of an entire alien empire. As years passed, the world changed. People built roads and towns far from the mountains, and the secret of the frozen dragon remained hidden. The cryovault had done its job. It kept the dragon alive, but asleep, waiting for anything that would bring warmth and movement back into its silent world. Inside the chamber, time did not exist. The dragon didn't dream or think. It was trapped between moments. But if someone had been able to see inside, they would have noticed something small yet important. Even frozen, the dragon's scales still gave off a faint glow. Every few years, a gentle pulse of light passed through its body, as if reminding the universe that it was still alive. The mountains, however, had their own mysteries. Locals sometimes told stories about strange metal shapes seen in the snow, or soft humming sounds coming from deep under the earth. Some people dismissed these stories as imagination, while others believed something unusual was buried there. But no one ever found the true source of these tales. It wasn't until modern technology arrived that things began to change. A large construction project was approved to build a long tunnel through the mountains. Machines and workers moved into the area. Roads were cleared. Heavy drills were brought in. The land that had been quiet for thousands of years was suddenly filled with activity. The workers noticed unusual readings underground. Sensors showed there was something large and metallic beneath the surface, something that didn't match any known structure. Some assumed it was an old crashed satellite or an unexploded piece of military equipment. But the shape was too smooth and too large for anything made on Earth. Still, no one expected it to be something alive. Nature had covered it so completely that even experts brushed off the idea of it being anything significant. But fate has its own timing. A small shift in the mountain caused a landslide near the construction site. Rocks tumbled down. Snow cracked open. And beneath it, for the first time in centuries, a part of the cryovault's surface was exposed. The metal glowed faintly, even under dirt and frost. Anyone who saw it would have felt something odd, like the object didn't belong in this world. But the mountains remained silent, holding the rest of the secret tightly inside. Inside the vault, the dragon remained frozen, unaware that humans were now only meters away from it, unaware that tools, machines, and footsteps were getting closer every day, unaware that its long, lonely wait was almost over. The Empress who abandoned it was gone. Her empire was dust. But destiny had planned something different for the creature she left behind. Something unexpected. Something that would connect two completely different worlds. A powerful alien being and a simple, hard-working human who had no idea that his life was about to change forever. The creature that once soared through alien skies now lay silent in a forgotten metal chamber, waiting for a moment it could never imagine. The world around it changed. The people around it lived and died. The mountain grew and eroded, but the dragon stayed exactly as it was. Sometimes, even in the deepest silence, life waits for the right person to arrive. And that person was already walking toward the ancient vault, without knowing that what he was about to find would not just be a discovery, but the beginning of a bond that even 2,000 years of time could not break. New morning in the mountains. The cold wind moved through the trees, carrying the smell of fresh soil and stone. The construction team had gathered early, preparing their machines for another long day of digging. Their project had already taken months, and everyone hoped they were getting close to finishing the next section of the tunnel. Among the workers was the foreman, a steady and calm man who did his job with care. He was not the type who rushed things or ignored strange details. He always paid attention to what the ground and the machines were telling him. The mountains, to him, were alive in their own way. If the rocks shifted, he noticed. If the soil changed texture, he felt it. He had been working in difficult terrain for years, so nothing surprised him until this particular morning. The workers set up their drills and sensors as usual. At first, the readings on their equipment looked normal, but as they moved deeper into the marked section, the readings started to behave strangely. The ground scanner beeped more often, picking up a large solid object beneath the surface. But when they compared the shape to their geological maps, nothing made sense. The object was smooth and curved, like no natural rock formation they had ever seen. One worker joked that it looked like a giant metal egg buried underground. Another said, reminded him of an old ship. But the foreman didn't laugh. He stood quietly, studying the screen, feeling that something important was hidden there. He told the team to slow down their drilling to avoid damaging whatever was beneath them. Some workers groaned, wanting to move faster, but the foreman insisted. He believed that when something feels unusual, it's better to be careful than to destroy something valuable. As work continued, the sky suddenly darkened. Clouds moved quickly across the mountains, and a strong wind blew through the trees. The foreman looked up and felt a familiar tension in the air. He knew a storm was approaching. Mountain storms were unpredictable, and he didn't want his team to be stuck when things got rough. But just as he shouted for everyone to pack up the equipment, the ground shook. Not a big earthquake, just a short, sharp vibration that made the rocks tremble around them. Workers grabbed onto whatever they could. A small landslide began on the cliffside above them. Snow and rock tumbled down, hitting the ground with loud thud stot. When the shaking stopped, dust rose into the cold air. For a moment, everything went silent. The foreman checked on his team. No one was hurt, just shaken. But when he looked toward the base of the slope, something caught his eye. A large chunk of snow had broken away, revealing a smooth metallic surface beneath it. Even in the low light, the metal gave off a dull bluish glow. One worker took a step closer and touched the exposed surface. It felt cold, much colder than the surrounding snow, and strangely smooth. Not like steel or aluminum. It was something different. "What is this?" One of them whispered. The foreman didn't answer. He crouched down and brushed away more snow with his hands. The metal continued far beyond what they could see. It curved gently inward, like the outer shell of some enormous machine or pod. He immediately stopped the team from using heavy tools. Instead, he asked them to clear the area slowly and carefully with shovels and brushes. The workers followed his orders, even though they were confused. In their minds, this discovery could be anything: an old military experiment, a hidden bunker, or something from a crashed aircraft. But the more snow they removed, the stranger it became. There were no bolts, no seams, no markings. Just a smooth, unbroken metallic surface. The foreman felt a chill, not from the cold, but from the feeling that this object did not belong to Earth. After several hours, they managed to expose a large section of the structure. It curved around like the side of a giant container. The foreman stepped back and tried to make sense of it. He had seen many strange things in his life, but nothing like this. It didn't look man-made. It didn't look damaged either. It looked as if it had been deliberately placed here, though that made no sense at all. The workers gathered around, discussing possibilities. Some thought it was a meteor that somehow contained metal. Others believed it was an old mining experiment from decades ago. One worker even said it looked like something from a science fiction movie, but everyone laughed it off. Everyone except the foreman. He called for more precise tools. The team used heat scanners to measure temperatures inside the object. The results left them speechless. The metal was colder than anything they had measured before. It felt as though the object had its own deep freeze inside, something far stronger than natural ice. The foreman asked the workers to stand back as he inspected a thin crack on the surface. The crack wasn't made by them. It had been there long before, probably caused by centuries of pressure from mountain stone. He used a flashlight and leaned closer. Through the crack, he saw something that made his breath stop. It looked like a layer of thick ice on the inside. But beneath that ice, he thought he saw a shape. A curve that was too smooth to be random. A form that looked almost alive. He didn't tell the workers what he saw, not yet. He needed time to understand it himself. Instead, he ordered them to set up lights and secure the area. He didn't want anyone breaking the structure by mistake. As they worked, The foreman couldn't stop thinking about the shape he had seen. It reminded him of an animal's body, but much larger than anything on Earth, and the glow of the metal, the freezing temperature inside, the strange readings, everything pointed to something extraordinary. Evening came, but the team didn't want to leave. Curiosity kept everyone awake, staring at the mysterious object. The foreman finally let them rest, promising that they would continue in the morning. But he himself stayed behind. When the workers left, he walked closer to the crack again. He pressed his hand against the cold surface. The metal hummed softly, a sound so gentle it felt like a whisper. It wasn't mechanical. It felt alive. He whispered to himself, "What are you?" He felt a strange connection, something inside the object responding to his presence. Maybe it was only his imagination, but the feeling was so strong that he couldn't ignore it. As darkness fell over the mountains, the foreman stayed there, studying the structure under the dim lights. Snowflakes drifted around him, but he barely noticed. He wasn't scared. He felt drawn to whatever was inside, as if it was waiting for someone to find it. The night grew colder. The wind howled through the cliffs. But he stayed until he realized he couldn't go any further without risking damage to the structure. He finally stepped back, unaware that inside the frozen chamber, something faint had begun to shift. The dragon, trapped for 2,000 years, sensed the change. The presence of humans. The warmth of lights. The vibrations of voices. It sensed life around it for the first time in centuries. The foreman didn't know it yet, but he was the first human in history to stand so close to a creature from a vanished alien empire. A creature that had waited silently, frozen in time, for someone brave enough to uncover its prison, and without knowing it, he had already started the process that would soon melt the ice, open the vault, and awaken the ancient being waiting inside. Morning, when the sun rose over the mountains and spread a soft light on the construction site. The workers slowly returned, still talking about the strange object they uncovered the previous day. Some were excited, others a little scared, but everyone was curious. The foreman arrived early, long before the rest, because he couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen through the crack in the metal shell. He walked straight to the object. Frost covered most of its surface again after the cold night, but the area around the crack still showed a thin layer of ice, like something inside was pushing cold air outward. He touched the metal lightly with his hand and felt the same quiet hum from before. It made him feel as if something inside was alive, even though he had no proof. The workers began setting up their equipment. They discussed how to open the object safely without damaging what was inside. Some suggested cutting through the metal, but the foreman refused immediately. He didn't want to risk harming anything. Instead, he asked for special heating tools used for melting thick ice underground. These tools produced a controlled warmth, slow and steady, without causing sudden shock. When the heaters arrived, the foreman positioned them around the cracked area. The workers switched them on, and warm air slowly spread across the frozen metal. Steam rose as the frost melted layer by layer. No one spoke much. Everyone watched closely as the ice thinned, revealing more of the inner chamber. After an hour, the metal creaked. The workers jumped back for safety, but the foreman stayed close, observing the tiny changes. The crack widened slightly, and small pieces of frozen debris fell to the ground. The sound wasn't loud, but it felt important, like the vault was taking its first breath in centuries. As the heaters continued working, the inner ice began to soften. The foreman leaned closer and saw the shape inside more clearly. What he had only guessed yesterday was now unmistakable. The curved form wasn't a piece of machinery or rock. It was a creature. He saw the outline of a long neck, a powerful chest, and wings folded tightly against its body. The scales on its skin seemed to catch the faint light and reflect it. Even through the thick ice, the creature looked majestic. One worker whispered, "Is that an animal?" Another replied quietly, "No animal on earth looks like that." The foreman didn't speak. He felt a strange mix of fear and calm. Fear because he didn't know what the creature was. Calm because something told him this being didn't mean harm. He didn't know why he felt that, but the feeling grew stronger the longer he watched it. The workers asked if they should call authorities. The foreman shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "We don't know what we're dealing with. Let's focus on melting the ice completely first." The heaters worked for hours, and slowly the thick ice around the creature's body began to drip. The workers could now see the shape of its head. It had long horns that curved back smoothly. Its eye sockets were large, though the eyes themselves were still closed. Its wings had delicate lines running across them. Like frozen rivers etched into ice. By afternoon, the vault itself began reacting. Strange symbols lit up inside the metal walls, glowing faint blue. The workers stepped back in shock. The foreman remained steady but alert. He realized the vault wasn't a simple container. It was designed to sense temperature changes and activity around it. The glow grew stronger as more ice melted. It wasn't threatening. It was almost like a machine waking up after a long sleep, checking its surroundings, trying to understand what was happening. The heaters kept running until the foreman walked over and turned them off. "I think it's enough," he said softly. The others nodded. Inside the vault, the last layers of ice clung to the creature's wings and tail. Steam floated through the air. The chamber was cold, but not bitter anymore. The creature's outline was now fully visible. Everyone stood quietly, waiting. Minutes passed without anything happening. Hours even. The creature remained still, locked in its silent world. Some workers grew impatient. "Maybe it's dead," one said. Another suggested leaving it alone until authorities arrived. But the foreman didn't move. He kept his eyes on the creature, knowing deep inside that the story wasn't over. Then it happened. A faint tremble ran through the creature's body, so small that only the foreman noticed at first. He stepped closer. Another tremble. This time the workers saw it too. They gasped and backed away. The creature's chest rose slightly, as if it was struggling to take a breath for the first time in centuries. Ice cracked around its ribs. A deep sound, like the distant rumble of thunder, came from within the chamber. Its claws twitched. Its wings quivered. The frozen skin around its eyes cracked slowly. Steam rose from its mouth. The creature was alive. The foreman felt his heart pounding, but he didn't move. He sensed that running or panicking would only frighten the creature. Instead, he stepped forward slowly and whispered, "It's okay. You're safe." He didn't know whether the creature understood him, but the words came out naturally. Like comforting a scared animal or a lost child, the dragon's eyes, once trapped under thick ice, opened slightly. A faint blue light glowed inside them. It blinked slowly, trying to understand where it was. Its gaze drifted over the metal walls, the heaters on the ground, the workers standing far away, and finally settled on the foreman. For a moment, everything froze again, not because of ice, but because of the quiet connection between them. The creature didn't growl. It didn't attack. It simply stared at him, confused and weak. The foreman stepped a little closer, careful not to make sudden movements. "You've been asleep for a long time," he said softly, even though he knew the dragon couldn't understand his words. But tone mattered more than language. The dragon lowered its head slightly, like it was trying to gather strength. It inhaled again, this time deeper. A faint mist left its nostrils. The workers felt colder air brush past them. One of them whispered, "What do we do now?" The foreman didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed on the creature. "We help it," he finally said. The workers looked at him as if he had lost his mind. Help it? A giant alien creature that just woke up after thousands of years? But the foreman didn't feel fear anymore. He felt responsibility. He had opened the vault. He had warmed the ice. He had called it back to life. The creature's survival was now in his hands. The dragon blinked again, slower this time. Its breathing steadied. It shifted slightly, testing the strength of its limbs. The metal chamber echoed with soft cracks as ice broke away from its body. The foreman moved closer, holding out his gloved hand, not to touch, but to show he meant no harm. "You're safe," he repeated softly. The dragon watched him, its eyes glowing faintly, then lowered its head again. It wasn't aggression. It was exhaustion. 2,000 years of frozen sleep had drained almost all of its strength. The foreman felt something deep inside him change. He didn't know why this creature didn't frighten him. Maybe it was because he saw weakness instead of danger. Maybe it was because he felt the creature was alone, just like anyone who had lost everything. The workers slowly stepped forward too, but only after seeing the dragon remain calm. They whispered among themselves, unsure what to do next. Some wanted to document the discovery. Others wanted to call scientists. But the foreman made the final decision. "No one touches it," he said firmly. "We wait. We give it time." The dragon closed its eyes again, its chest rising and falling in slow, tired breaths. The shimmering light in its scales dimmed, but not completely. It was a live but very weak dot as the workers set up lights around the vault and secured the area. The foreman remained near the creature, watching over it like a guardian. He knew this was no ordinary moment. This was the start of something far bigger than any of them understood. He didn't know yet that the creature, even in its weakness, had already recognized him. It sensed warmth, safety, and kindness, a rare feeling in its long, lonely existence, and so the bond began silently, between a human who refused to walk away and a dragon that had waited 2,000 years for someone to come. Later that same evening, when the cold air settled over the mountains again, the workers had finished setting up safety barriers, lights, and portable heaters around the vault. Most of them were still unsure about staying close to the creature, even though it hadn't shown any sign of danger. They kept their distance, talking quietly and watching the foreman, who refused to leave the dragon's side. He sat on a flat rock near the vault, a few meters away from the creature. The dragon lay weakly on the metal floor, still covered with thin patches of ice, its wings folded tightly, its chest rising and falling slowly. The soft blue light from its scales was dim, but steady. The foreman couldn't explain it, but something about the creature made him feel calm instead of afraid. It looked tired, confused, lost, not threatening. Night brought stronger winds. Snowflakes drifted through the air, landing on the heated lamps and melting instantly. The workers had retreated to the temporary shelter they set up nearby, leaving only the foreman outside. He stayed because he felt responsible. He had opened the vault, and he wasn't going to let the creature wake up alone in a strange world. After some time, he noticed the dragon move again. Not violently, just a slow shift of its wings, as if it was trying to stretch. The foreman stood up carefully. He didn't walk toward it, just waited, showing he wasn't a threat. The dragon lifted its head a few centimeters. Its eyes opened slightly, glowing faint blue in the dark. It looked directly at the foreman as if trying to understand who he was. The creature blinked slowly, the way a tired animal might while waking up from a long sleep. The foreman's voice was soft. "Easy, you're all right." He didn't know if the creature understood words, but tone mattered. Even wild animals understood tone. And this creature, though far from anything on Earth, had shown no reason to fear him so far. The dragon tried to rise but couldn't. Its body trembled with weakness. Its front claws scraped lightly against the metallic floor of the vault. The sound echoed softly in the cold air. It lowered its head again, breathing harder now, exhausted from the small effort. The foreman stepped closer, moving slowly so the creature wouldn't panic. Then he stopped a short distance away and knelt so he wouldn't appear tall or threatening. "You're weak because you were frozen for so long," he said quietly. "You just need time." The dragon's gaze softened, and it blinked again, slower than before. A faint mist escaped its nostrils each time it breathed out. The foreman felt the cold air brush past him, but he stayed. For a moment, the world around them felt completely silent, just a man and a frozen creature who didn't understand each other's languages, but somehow understood each other's intentions. After a while, the workers returned with food and warm drinks for themselves. They peeked nervously at the dragon, but didn't come too close. Some still couldn't believe they were standing near a creature that looked like it came from another world. One worker asked quietly, "Do you think it will attack when it gets stronger?" The foreman shook his head. "No, it would have done that already if it wanted to." Another said, "We should call someone. Scientists, maybe. Or the government." The foreman didn't answer immediately. He stared at the creature, thinking. If they called authorities, the dragon would be taken away. Scientists would study it, maybe cage it, maybe treat it like an object or experiment. The idea bothered him deeply. This creature didn't choose to come here. It didn't even know where it was. Taking it away by force felt wrong. "We'll call later," he finally said. "Right now, let's just make sure it survives the night." The workers exchanged looks, but didn't argue. They trusted the foreman, even if they didn't fully understand his reasons. Hours passed. The wind grew stronger. Snow piled against the metal walls. The dragon barely moved, but stayed awake, its eyes occasionally drifting toward the foreman. It seemed to be studying him, trying to make sense of this strange human who stayed so close without showing fear. At one point, the dragon shifted its body slightly, and its tail slid toward the entrance of the vault. The foreman noticed that the creature was trying to keep itself warm. Its scales glowed faintly whenever it breathed. He wondered if the glow happened naturally, or because it was trying to stay alive. "Hold on," he whispered. He stood up and walked to the heaters. He adjusted them so that warm air flowed gently toward the dragon instead of the walls. The creature watched him the entire time, alert but calm. When he returned to his place near the rock, the dragon lifted its head again, just a little, and breathed in the warm air. The glow on its scales brightened for a moment. The foreman smiled softly. "Good, that's better." It felt strange to talk to a creature like this, but it also felt natural. The workers watched from a distance, whispering about how the dragon seemed to trust the foreman more than anyone else. Later in the night, the foreman heard a soft sound, almost like a low hum. At first, he thought it was the heaters, but when he listened closely, he realized it came from inside the vault. The walls glowed faintly again, showing symbols none of them could understand. The dragon reacted to the glow, lifting its head and blinking tiredly. The hum grew a little louder, then faded again. The foreman didn't know what it meant. Maybe the vault sensed the dragon's weakness and was reacting. Maybe it was some kind of ancient technology still trying to complete its purpose. The dragon's breathing steadied again. The glow slowly disappeared. Everything returned to silence. The foreman sat quietly, watching the creature until the stars faded and the sun started to rise. He barely felt the cold anymore. Exhaustion tugged at him, but he didn't want to sleep. He didn't want the creature to wake up alone or frightened. When the morning light touched the mountain peaks, the dragon moved again. This time, it stretched its wings slightly, only a few centimeters, but it was a sign of improving strength. Thin ice cracked and fell from its scales. The faint light in its skin flickered softly. The foreman stood slowly, concerned but hopeful. "You're getting better," he whispered. The dragon blinked. It lowered its head again, but this time it didn't look weak, it looked peaceful, as if recognizing the foreman as the first friendly being it had seen in 2,000 years. The workers gathered around cautiously. They saw the dragon's improved movement and whispered nervously. One asked, "Should we keep feeding the heaters?" "Yes," the foreman replied. "Keep it warm." Another asked, "So what's the plan?" "We can't keep this a secret forever." The foreman looked at the creature, then at the team. "We don't do anything until it's strong enough to stand. When that happens, we let it choose what it wants." The team fell silent. They didn't fully understand, but they trusted him. The dragon closed its eyes again, breathing calmly. Snowflakes drifted into the vault, melting before they reached the floor. The heaters hummed softly. The workers kept watch, and the foreman stood near the creature, feeling that something important was happening, even if he couldn't explain what it was. There was a connection forming, slow and silent, between a human who refused to abandon a creature in need, and a dragon who had been abandoned by its own ruler thousands of years ago. And as the new day began, neither of them knew that their bond was only going to grow stronger, leading to a moment when the dragon would stand for the first time, and the world around them would change forever. When the dragon finally stood on its feet again, it seemed like a creature reborn. Its icy blue scales were still cold to the touch, but they no longer looked lifeless. The glow beneath them had grown brighter, almost like the heartbeat of the creature had returned after centuries of silence. The foreman stood close, not because he felt fearless, but because he understood that the dragon needed someone it could trust. And somehow, after everything that happened, he had become that person. The dragon looked around the cave with slow, thoughtful movements. Every sound, every flicker of light, every gust of air seemed new to it. It had been trapped for almost 2,000 years. Now, every sensation felt like a memory being washed clean. The foreman could see that the dragon was trying to understand this strange planet and the strange creature him who had rescued it from the frozen prison. He spoke softly, even though he wasn't sure the dragon understood human language. "You're safe now," he said, his voice calm and steady. "No one is here to hurt you." The dragon lowered its head slightly, as if acknowledging his words. The foreman slowly reached out a hand, and after a moment of hesitation, the dragon leaned forward. Its breath felt cool against his arm, yet comforting in a way he never expected. The moment felt unreal, like something he had only heard in old myths. That the rest of the crew kept their distance. They watched from behind equipment and rocks, whispering to each other. Some were amazed, some frightened, and some simply confused. They had signed up to build a tunnel, not to witness a creature from another world. But none of them dared interrupt the quiet bond forming between the dragon and the foreman. The dragon walked closer, its steps heavy but controlled. The ground vibrated with each movement, yet the foreman didn't back away. The creature lowered its body, as if trying to appear less threatening. It reminded the foreman of how scared animals behave when they want to show trust. He understood. This dragon was not a monster. It was just lost, alone, and unsure of the world it had awakened into. Hours passed as the dragon explored the cave, sniffing the walls, tapping the metal pieces of the old alien vault with its claws, and watching the humans with curious eyes. The foreman remained nearby, guiding it away from dangerous areas and calming it whenever loud equipment made it jump. The connection between them grew stronger with each moment. But soon, the outside world learned about the discovery. It began with a report. A member of the survey team, frightened by the situation, sent a message to authorities. They believed such a discovery was too big to hide. Within a few hours, the area was surrounded. Government vehicles lined the road leading to the site. Scientists, security teams, and officials stepped out, each of them shocked by the sight of the enormous creature standing in the clearing. The dragon immediately sensed danger. Its wings folded tightly against its body, and a soft growl rose from its throat. The foreman stepped in front of it without even thinking. He raised his hands toward the approaching officers. "Please," he said firmly, "don't come too close. It's frightened, not hostile." But the officials were not listening. They spoke into radios, discussed containment procedures, and moved forward cautiously. Some carried equipment designed to restrain or sedate large animals. They didn't understand that this was not an animal from Earth. Their methods could harm it, maybe even kill it. The dragon stepped back, pressing its tail against the rocks. Its eyes glowed brighter, an instinctive reaction to fear. The foreman quickly turned to it. "It's all right," he whispered. "Don't panic. I'm here." The dragon lowered its head again, but its breathing grew heavy. It didn't want to hurt anyone, but it wasn't going to allow anyone to harm the one human it trusted. One of the officers raised a device that looked like a launcher. The foreman immediately stepped forward. "Stop," he shouted. "You can't use that on it. It won't understand. It'll defend itself." The officer hesitated, but not enough. He aimed again. The moment the device clicked, the dragon reacted. Not with violence, but with a protective instinct so strong it moved like a shield. It spread one wing in front of the foreman, blocking him completely. A swirl of cold air burst from its body, not an attack, but a warning like a natural reflex to keep danger away. The temperature dropped so fast that the officers stepped back. Frost formed on their gear. No one was hurt, and the dragon had kept its power controlled. But everyone finally understood what they were dealing with. A powerful being capable of great strength, but unwilling to hurt the human who had saved it. The foreman put his hand on the dragon's wing, calming it. He turned to the officials and said, "You can't treat it like a threat. It's alive. It's scared. And it trusts me. Let me help you understand it before you make a mistake." His words created silence among the crowd. No one knew what to do next. This situation wasn't written in any rule book. And the foreman was right. They needed him if they wanted to avoid disaster. After a long discussion, an agreement was made. A group of scientists would study the dragon, but the foreman would stay by its side at all times. They would not imprison it. They would not harm it. Instead, they would observe it in a safe area while allowing it space to adapt to Earth's environment. The dragon seemed to sense the change. When the foreman walked beside it, it followed him willingly. The scientists watched in awe as the enormous creature moved with surprising calmness as long as the foreman remained close. Days passed, and the dragon grew healthier. It ate carefully prepared food, rested in a secured valley, and explored its surroundings. The foreman spent most of his time sitting near it, talking softly, sometimes telling stories about Earth, sometimes just letting the dragon listen to the sounds of nature. The dragon often rested its head on the ground beside him, the same way a loyal creature might rest beside someone it trusts deeply. Its eyes softened whenever he approached. It even began to mimic small gestures, tilting its head when he spoke, or making low, gentle sounds when he seemed tired. The bond was unlike anything anyone had ever witnessed. One night, as the foreman sat near the creature under the stars, he noticed the dragon looking up at the sky, almost as if remembering the distant world it came from. He wondered what it had lost, its home, its freedom, the Empress who had abandoned it. Maybe it missed those memories. Maybe it didn't. But he knew one thing for sure. It wasn't alone anymore. The dragon shifted closer, its scales glowing faintly in the moonlight. The foreman placed a hand on its neck. "You're safe here," he whispered. "No one will leave you again." The dragon closed its eyes slowly, showing its trust and acceptance in time. The world would learn about this incredible creature. People would tell stories about the frozen dragon from another planet and the human who brought it back to life. But for the Foreman, it wasn't a story about legends or fame. It was simply about compassion, about choosing to help something that couldn't help itself. And for the dragon, Earth became more than just a planet where it woke up after 2,000 years. It became a place where it found kindness for the first time. A place where it wasn't used as a tool or abandoned. A place where it discovered a new purpose. By the end of everything, it wasn't the Empress who defined the dragon's destiny. It was the human who melted the ice, offered a hand, and gave it a second life. And the dragon never forgot that kindness. Not even for a moment.